guys, welcome back to the Checkered Flag Podcast. I am co-host Drew, joined here with Nate, where we'll be talking about the checkers and wreckers of Circuit of the Americas. But before we get into that, let's first talk about the winner, Tyler Reddick, making history for NASCAR. No one has ever won the first 3 races into a season since we've started this series in 1949, and Tyler Reddick just made history with Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin being team owners. Cammy, excuse me, we're trying to be professional here. Nate, what are we thinking? Toyotas are back. We are so back.
Yeah, I had no thought in my mind that anybody was going to win that race except for SVG, but if anybody was to do it right now, I guess it should have been Tyler Reddick. He's on fire right now, and there's nothing else that we can really say about it. Obviously, he was a winner there before, right? He's performed well there, so I'm not too surprised with the results that we found with the Circuit of the Americas race. But yeah, wow, 3 wins to start off the season. If anybody knows something about a three-peat, it's Michael Jordan.
No doubt. And I know, I remember Tyler Reddick quoted in the 500, like, he feels like he won a ring, but, they got to wait to celebrate that when they get the championship. And so far, so good. I mean, they have a massive points gap to second place teammate Bubba Wallace, and shout out to Bubba. 2311 overall did a good job. Obviously, Riley Herbst, we know, is going to struggle. Besides the drafting tracks, I don't think much is going to change on that team, but, Bubba Wallace isn't the strongest road course racer, but he found a way to still get into the top 15. I can't remember where he finished off the top of my head. I believe he finished right outside the top 10 in 11th. So I don't think it was just Tyler Reddick that, obviously he's a really good road course racer, but I think 2311 hit the nail in the coffin in terms of their car setups for this weekend, which is really exciting. But, now the test is going to come into Phoenix next week where, we're not throwing all these wild cards in where we have 2 super speedways or 2 drafting tracks and a road course. Now we're starting to get into the more traditional NASCAR tracks that we typically see the champions excel in. And I know Tyler Reddick made the championship back in 2024 with that win at Homestead, but this is going to be a real test to how strong 2311 really is this year. But some other notable finishers, you want to take that away?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest takeaways from this one is the lack of speed from the Fords again. Blaney was the only Ford to finish in the top 14, with Joey Logano rounding out the top 15 there, and I was really surprised to see that. Obviously, like, we don't have as many of the guys who are the known road course racers who are driving those Fords right now. But at the same time, you'd expect to see some of those prestigious drivers like an Austin Cindric or, Chris Buescher, one of those kinds of guys to finish up towards the front of the pack. But to only see one Ford in the top 14 of this race was kind of crazy to me. But Blaney carried the Fords, I tell you that much. He really put them on their back and carried them all the way. Was really battling with Tyler Reddick there for a long time throughout that race, and really was the only thing that Ford brought to the table that week. So if anybody was to do it, I'm glad that it was Blaney, and he really showed up and showed out for the Fords.
Yeah, to put an entire manufacturer on your back and roll with it, especially going into a road course race, is kind of ridiculous. But I mean, throughout the race, a couple of other notable Fords that were running up front. I mean, Austin Cindric hit the top 10 at some point. Can't remember if they made a bad pit call or whatnot, but they lost their track position and were never really contenders. Then Chris Buescher was kind of floating around the top 8, top 12 throughout the entire race, and then got into that whole fiasco with Kyle Busch and Jesse Love, teammates at RCR. Got into Buescher, spun him out. He had to kind of come back from that spin after being placed like 30th. I still believe he got a top 25, but I know that that's not the finish that we want to see out of RFK, because I still think that RFK is going to do really good this year. Pre started out winning the Clash at Snowman Gray, but we haven't really seen much since. And granted, 2 drafting tracks and a road course, but it's not, down the road we're going to have multiple road course events. So the fact that we only have one Ford in the top 14, that's going to be something to look out for sure. But speaking of people getting wrecked and coming back to the front, how about Connor Zilich's redemption round at Circuit of the Americas? I mean, there was twice. He got into 2 separate accidents and still gets a top 15. Unreal from that rookie.
Yeah, Connor Zilich was really probably my best driver throughout the day, as far as just speed goes throughout the entire Circuit of the Americas race. I'm a little bit biased because I'm a Trackhouse guy, and I do like Connor Zilisch. But at the same time, I think that he performed well enough to be able to go from the back to the front multiple times throughout the race. I mean, he started off outside the top 20, drove up, was in the top 10 for a long time throughout the race, gets knocked back again. I think they had a bad pit stop, gets pushed back. Then he also got spun out, got pushed to the back again, and still manages to finish within the top 14 after getting spun out with like 13 to go. So, I mean, he really impressed me. Obviously, we know that he's good at these road courses from what we saw on the O'Reilly series. He was battling there with SVG in the O'Reilly series of this COTA race till he got spun out again. It was kind of like the shades from the past almost kind of thing where it was very similar in how he got spun out. So he was really good in my opinion. I also think that Trackhouse just in general, Ross was doing well, had some good speed throughout the majority of that race. Was running top 10 for I would say 90% of the race until he got unlucky with that wheel that he lost. And yeah, I was just really impressed with what I saw out of those Trackhouse guys.
Yeah, right on. And we typically see Ross Chastain and SVG, like those guys are good at COTA. Ross Chastain got his first career win at Circuit of the Americas. SVG, we know how much of a good road course racer he is. So, Trackhouse has been showing speed these last couple of weeks. So that's definitely something to look forward to. Just because, I felt like they lacked a little bit in speed last year. I feel like they were solid, like top 15, like week in, week out, but nothing that really showed flashes of like winning speed. And we saw that in stage one with Ross before his whole fiasco with the tire. SVG obviously running up front for a lot of the portion of the race. Didn't lead many laps, but he was in contention right at the end with the battle with Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick. But how about the road course ringers? I mean, we know Michael McDowell, Allmendinger. We're expected these guys to run top 10, and I know looking ahead, you had Allmendinger finished ninth, McDowell with a top five. So, Spire was fast too. But given, Daniel Suarez, obviously, I don't know what happened to that pit strategy in stage two. They looked great. They finished fourth in that stage, stayed out, took tires, ended up, cycling back to like 24th or something like that, just due with the pit strategies. But, what about Carson Hocevar? Where was he? I mean, he was a phenom the first 2 weeks, and we didn't see him at all. He was running like top 15, top 20, and but Mike Joy shows a clip of Carson Hocevar just doing a random spin out on the front stretch, and he's showing it like Dale just died. Like, what was going on with that? Like, throughout the entire race, you had Harvick rambling again, Clint Boyer talking out of his ass. Then you had Mike Joy, kind of leading the charge, all the sponsors and stuff. Where is the spark in the Fox booth, man? I'm so over this stuff. I miss when Darrell Waltrip was like boogity boogity boogity, before the green flag. Like, that's like something notorious for NASCAR, and we're missing something like that in this current Fox booth. But besides the point, shout out to Trackhouse, shout out to Spire, shout out to the road course ringers. Some other notable finishers, as you see in sixth place, Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson, throughout the entire day, was dealing with his cooling suit not working, and I believe it was mid 80s at Circuit of the Americas this weekend. So definitely not a situation you want to be in. But strong showing for Kyle Larson, was definitely the best Chevy, not best Chevy, but best Hendrick Chevy. But where was Alex Bowman?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like he got sick, right? He got the flu mid race, had to switch. I don't remember who he switched with, but that was kind of a crazy situation. I mean, I remember seeing the broadcast cut over, and his car's just sitting in the garage with somebody new jumping in the front seat, and I was like, wow, I didn't even know that Alex Bowman was sick to go into this race. I mean, it was just kind of a story that started to develop midway through the race. Um, but I mean, another big finisher too. I think that we can take away from this one is Denny Hamlin. I mean, look, Denny has never finished in the top 10 at COTA they were talking about on the broadcast. And for him to be able to come in and, get that top 10 finish, I think it's really, really showing how strong these Toyotas are. Bubba finishing right outside the top 10. I mean, Ty Gibbs, similar to Connor, I think had one of the best cars out there all day. He was just stuck at the back of the pack. I think that these Toyotas really showed that they know what they're doing, and they know how to drive throughout the entirety of the pack.
Yeah, right on. And I know Seabell, we're expected to see him run up front at COTA. Won there last year. That was the second race of his three-peat that he had. Chase Briscoe, unfortunate mechanical problems that happened to him, but he led some laps right at the beginning. Showed flashes of great short run speed at these road courses. So I'm really liking the position Toyota's in right now. They're looking like the best manufacturer out there. It's kind of being, with that being said, they have won the first three races, so you can't take that away from them. But that Alex Bowman flu deal, I think Chad Knaus himself, the car chief for Hendrick, went over to Myatt Snyder, who is a full-time O'Reilly's driver, and asked him to sub in for Alex Bowman. If you have Chad Knaus, out of all people, going up to you and saying to swap out with Alex Bowman, I think Alex Bowman's in trouble. I think he is going to be on the hot seat. We're looking at the standings right now. He has 23 points in three races. 23 in a Hendrick car, in the powerhouse Chevy team in the sport, in a car that had a teammate win the championship last year. What is going on with Alex Bowman? They are absolutely falling apart. I'm really hoping that, this is just a beginning of the year slump and they're able to turn it around, because we know Alex Bowman's coming up on a contract year. Ally loves him, but Hendrick is more than happy to find a better suited driver for that ride, for that 48 car. But kind of looking ahead into Phoenix, obviously we're going to see a whole different group of people up front, given that road course racing and short flat intermediates are going to be different. But that's just kind of my takeaway on Alex Bowman. He definitely needs to get some good finishes, because he's just keeps digging himself into a deeper hole. And, obviously the flu isn't everything. The flu isn't his fault. Everyone gets sick, but, just really bad timing and unfortunate circumstances for sure. But, looking ahead, we're three races into the season. Excuse me. Looking ahead, who are you liking going into Phoenix?
Yeah, I guess for me going into Phoenix, let me grab this list here. Uh Going into Phoenix, obviously I think you can't write off Tyler Reddick. I wrote him off last week and I was kicking myself in the ass for it. I think you've got to put him up there, like you said, he was in the championship 4 a couple of years ago. And has a really good car this year. It seems like across multiple tracks. Has good long run speed. I've really liked what I've seen out of Tyler Reddick this year. I don't think there's anything you could take away that we haven't liked out of Tyler Reddick this year. Um, so I really like him moving forward. My number two is gonna be Bubba Wallace. He's just kind of been one of those guys that's been getting quality finishes every week, and I think that that's one thing that I think I didn't even realize necessarily until this week how much the new championship format is going to be affected by consistency. I mean, you look at Bubba Wallace, you look at Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, like those kinds of guys that are finishing up towards the front of the pack every week, and they're getting stage points and doing all these other different things throughout the course of a race. This consistency is paying off for them. They're all the ones that are sitting up at the top right now. Whereas Ross won a stage last week, was I think 12th in the standings, and gets unlucky, finishes at the back of the pack and drops like eight or nine positions. So I think that that's one thing that we're going to really have to take away, that with this championship this year, it's not only going to be about winning races, but it's also going to be about how consistently can you finish towards the front. And I think that Bubba has been doing a really good job of that. Another person I think's been doing good at staying up front at the right times is Ryan Blaney. I think obviously he had one of the best cars out here this past week and really performed well for, all of the Fords is having, I guess, terrible packages from what we saw in the finishings. But I think that Blaney has been really showing with, I mean, good equipment that he's able to finish up there towards the front. My next is going to be Chase Elliott. I think Chase has been another guy who's just been consistent, but he's been consistent in the fact that he's kind of just sneaking through the rankings. I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen him up towards the front. He just kind of sneaks into that, like, kind of like Ross was last year, where he sneaks into that top 10 towards the end of the race. He's just kind of laying back, and then he sneaks in at the very end to where he's jumping in to a spot to where he's able to contend with points. My top 5 to round out the this week is going to be SVG. He's sitting right up there in points. He's been finishing well at ovals. He's performed well on the road courses. Obviously, he didn't get the finish that he wanted and that I think everybody kind of expected from him last week with getting that second place finish. But if he can continue to perform on ovals, I think SVG is going to be a really dangerous driver moving forward. So yeah, that's my those are my top 5 running away from this week.
Yeah, I mean, not a bad top five considering most of them are up there in standings. So, I mean, kind of common sense with that. And I'm just messing with you, but I mean, has SVG finally been nerfed? Who knows? I know Circuit of the Americas last year when he had his first career road course start as a full-time driver, didn't win that race, but then proceeded to win the next 5 road courses in a row. Jeff Gordon still going to remain on top. Thank God, bless his heart, with the 6 road courses in a row, getting that win. But, hopefully, with how Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, how they all drove today, looking ahead, SVG may have some competition. And that was one thing we talked about in the last podcast. Who were we going to think that was going to take over what SVG was doing? And we finally got our answer. Given it's temporary, but we finally have another winner on a road course that's not SVG. But going into my top 5, very similar to you, Reddick, number 1, that's a given. 3 wins in a row, historic start to the season, 70-point lead in the standings to second place Bubba Wallace. So I'm also going to put at number 2 myself. Those 23-11 guys are scary fast right now. Granted, Bubba didn't get a top 10, he still finished 11th, and he's not the best at road courses, like I mentioned before. But it's really good to see them off to a very hot start to this year. Number 3, I'm going to throw Ryan Blaney in there. Ryan Blaney didn't get the finish he wanted at the 500, but bounced back, got a top 10 at the, oh, there goes my webcam. Sorry about that, guys. Technical errors. They have nerfed me in multiple ways. Don't have a webcam, and I'm also feeling a little ill. That's why you don't see much emotion out of me right now, but I am on the road to recovery. We will get back, but I don't know if I cut out on my number 3, but my number 3 driver was, oh, I can't remember. Oh yeah, Blaney. Blaney didn't get the finish he wanted at the 500, but gets a top 10 at Atlanta and then follows it up with a top 5, or not top 5. I believe he got a top 5, yes, at the Circuit of the Americas. Let me double check that. That may be incorrect. Okay, yes, we got 8th. Still got a
Oh,
top 10. 2 top 10s in a row for Blaney. I'm liking where they're at right now. Definitely the best Ford in the field right now. But looking at number 4 and number 5, want to give SVG an honorable mention before I talk about number 4 and 5. I was debating on putting him in here, but just because he's still, we don't know how good he's going to be at ovals this year. And we had 3 wild cards. We saw how much he struggled at the beginning of the year on ovals. So, honorable mention SVG, huge point stays out of the last 2 days. With COTA and Atlanta, had a great finish at Atlanta. So, definitely high up in the standings, and, something to look out for too is, we get closer and closer to summertime, and the Chase playoffs start later in the year in September. But number 4, number 5, number 4, Chase Elliott starts the year off with a top 5 at the Daytona 500, was so close to winning it, but, no cigar. Follows it up at Circuit of the Americas with a top 10, just running behind his teammate Kyle Larson, who I have at number 5. Larson has shown speed the first 3 races. Was leading laps at Atlanta, was running up front at the Daytona 500. Didn't have the winning speed today that we did see out of the Toyotas and SVG, but was still up there in contention. Finishes out with a 6th place finish, and that team really needed it considering that they finished 32nd at Atlanta. So that kind of rounds out my top 5. Obviously got a kind of a recurring theme. Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, the top of their manufacturers right now. That's who I have in my top 5. But I finally got a point. I did get a point. We're not going to go 36-0, 0-36 against Nate. I did pick Ty Gibbs, and granted, if Connor Zilic didn't get spun out on that last restart, Nate definitely would have won. Zilic definitely had the better car, but Gibbs pulls out a 4th place finish. I did like my pick, but looking into Phoenix, we're obviously going to have 2 different people. So who's your pick today?
yeah, I think I've been kind of browsing through it here as you were talking. I think that my pick for this week, I'm gonna run with Chase Elliott. I think that he's shown speed at all 3 tracks so far. He's shown that he can win it at these intermediate style races, and I really like what he's got going for him. I really like that car that they put him in this year. I really feel like, especially after last year, it seemed like he got off to a slower start. I mean, he was able to compete later into the playoffs, but I just think he was kind of an afterthought last year, and I don't think that'll be the case this year. It looks like they've really put him in some better equipment, and they brought their best game to the table here. So I think that Chase is going to be he's going to be competitive like he has been these last few weeks in Daytona, Atlanta, and even at COTA. And I really hope that he's able to, finish up there towards the top of the pack when it comes to this Phoenix race.
Yeah, and I don't really know why you're picking a Chevy considering how strong the Toyotas are right now. I think that's a dumb choice, and I'm going to tie up the series after this weekend. My pick is going to be Denny Hamlin. And I say that because of how dominant he was in the fall race, just a couple of months ago, but also the fact that these Toyotas have something going for this year. I mean, Denny Hamlin got a top 10 at Circuit of the Americas. We would have never seen that. A couple of years ago, he was consistently running 20th to 25th place, but now that we're going back to the traditional NASCAR ovals, more horsepower at the Phoenix racetrack, Denny Hamlin is going to be my pick, and I think he's going to absolutely show out against Chase Elliott.
Yeah, I was gonna try to take Denny Hamlin, but I already used him up, so I can't take him this week.
Right on. Well, those are our two picks. And we're going to do a little things a little bit differently with these podcasts, rather than having one giant episode. I know you guys are going to fall asleep within the first 15 minutes, so we're wanting to make these a little bit shorter where we'll talk about the race, that just happened the weekend before, as well as, the notable stories, as well as, our picks going into, or our power rankings going into next week. But we'll also be recording another episode later this week regarding, Phoenix headlines, who are we favoring, fantasy picks, all of that information. And, we'll talk about that a little bit later this week so you guys can get fully honed in on the details. But that's what we're going to be doing right now. Nate, I'm going to let you take it away. Do you have any final thoughts about, COTA or anything else?
Yeah, I would just like Drew was saying, we're gonna be switching things up with this podcast. Be on the lookout for the episode 2 of this week, pre-race for Phoenix on, I'd say, Friday evening. So we're really excited. We're kicking things off here. I'm really excited for Phoenix. Excited to get into these to get into these intermediate style tracks. I know Phoenix was kind of a snooze fest, kind of the same guy running up front, especially in last year's race. But I think that once we get past Phoenix, it's going to be really fun seeing those guys, all of our favorite drivers, finishing up towards the front of these packs. But yeah, I think that'll do it for us this week, or this episode, episode 1 of this week on the Checkered Flag
Jesus
podcast.
Christ. You having a stroke?
Yeah, I'm having a stroke. Catch us back here on Friday, and we're gonna be talking more and more about the Phoenix race coming up. See ya.
Yeah. Checker Flag Podcast. Feel free to subscribe, like all of our channels. All of our links to our social media will be below on TikTok and Instagram. Feel free to drop a like, subscribe, and as always, go fast. Later, guys.
Later.